Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, well, so in this episode, I thought I'd try to say something about the Danish philosopher Kierkegaard and what he has to say in a work of his called The Present Age, an incisive cultural critique of his own time. But more specifically, what I want to do is I want to look at what the philosopher Herbert Dreyfus says about it, because it's really interesting. You see, what makes Dreyfus's article fascinating is that in discussing the present age, which by the way was written in the mid-1800s, he speculates on what Kierkegaard would have thought of our age of the internet. He basically argues that just like Kierkegaard heavily denounced what he called the public and the press of his own time, he would have been even more concerned with our life-consuming engagement with the internet. Okay, well, why don't I just try to first lay out Dreyfus's position in broad strokes and then try to go into some of the details later. Okay, well, so simply put, in discussing the present age, Dreyfus says that Kierkegaard would have hated the internet. Okay, well, why? Well, first of all, he would have hated it because it encourages nothing but anonymity, and because it promotes curiosity or engagement free of all risk. And in these ways, what it does is it mitigates against real responsibility and real commitment. And ultimately, because of all this, it undermines a sense of who we are, our sense of self. But these aren't the only problems. No, Dreyfus also argues that Kierkegaard would have judged the internet as essentially wiping out any qualitative distinctions. In other words, he would have seen it as encouraging the idea that every perspective is as valid as the next one. And so, where at the end of the day, the inevitable consequence is, well, relativism and finally, nihilism. Okay. Well, so before I get into the details of Dreyfus's article, let me first try to say something about what Kierkegaard himself says in The Present Age, at least very generally. So, as I mentioned at the outset, what Kierkegaard talks about there are basically two things that are connected. One, the public, and two, the press. Two things which he sees as serious problems with the culture of his own age. Okay, so by public, he essentially means the crowd. And, well, what's the crowd? Well, the crowd is an abstraction. The crowd is everything and nothing. And the crowd serves as the great leveler. In other words, when we're subsumed by the crowd, we're no longer concrete individuals. Our individuality is stifled. There are no more particularities. We just parrot what others say and believe. We reinforce the status quo. We all become third parties. We become ciphers. We don't heed our own individual calling and integrity and separateness. We don't go inward. To quote Kierkegaard, when we belong to the crowd, we are nothing. Actually, I think that something like this is what Socrates meant when he said that the unexamined life is not worth living. Anyway, now Kierkegaard thinks that it's the press which in part creates this monstrous crowd that characterizes society at large, or the society that he lived in. Because what the press does is it constantly disseminates information, thereby making everybody a passive spectator. Everybody reads. They read everything. But in doing so, they become less involved with things personally and locally. They have all their opinions now, but it's all idle talk. It's all chatter and no action and no commitment and no first-hand experience. No, action has been replaced with voyeurism and amusement, a kind of low-grade hedonism. Actually, this is why Kierkegaard calls his age a time of reflection without any passion. It's a sedentary, passionless age with endless reflection. Nobody's motivated to get up and pursue their ideals if they could figure out what these were in the first place. Everybody's stifled by information, and so because of this, they're in a perpetual state of ambiguity and apathy and inaction. Now, there's more to be said here, obviously, but hopefully you get the basic point. Okay, well, so now back to Dreyfus. So what he argues is that given what Kierkegaard says in the present age, he would have been absolutely appalled by what's going on in our world today, one where the internet takes center place. I mean, to begin with, think about how many people remain anonymous when they post. Views are posted from no one and from nowhere. Anyone can put anything they want into circulation. Anyone can claim all sorts of radical and outrageous and irresponsible things, but without any real-world consequences. Life is a risk-free game, or to use Kierkegaard's own words, nobody confronts the danger and the harsh judgment of existence anymore. Why get up and stand up against the oppressor and lay your body on the ground when you can just go through the simulacrum of protesting online by giving a facile thumbs down? And what's more, there's no personal commitment or real-life experience behind many of these claims made online. And worse, there's no longer any allegiance to expertise. There's no concern about qualitative distinctions. Quality and truth is gravely undermined. And Kierkegaard wouldn't be done with his criticism, says Dreyfus. No, there's also the whole issue of the constant trivial or superficial amusement that the internet encourages, which, by the way, is really a version of what Kierkegaard called the aesthetic mode of existence, which is basically when we fight off boredom by spending all of our time as spectators distracting ourselves with small pleasures. Well, this is our mode of being on the internet. As Dreyfus says, something more interesting or more shiny is always only a click or a swipe away. And of course, it's endless, and it's all virtual. But here's the thing. For Kierkegaard, the cost of the aesthetic mode of existence is severe. And that's because what it means is that we have no self, no fixed identity, or at least no stable one. Online, we are largely disinterested, fluid, fragmented, virtual spectators. We move from one thing to another without any real, genuine, passional preference and without any consistent identity and existential grounding. But for Kierkegaard, the self cannot be flitting like this. No, it requires stability and constancy. And stability and constancy, well, for Kierkegaard, that is a product of being anchored to something. It's a product of having commitments and a larger life plan. Without these things, meaninglessness and despair is the inevitable outcome. It's a short jump from life online to nihilism. Bye for now.